the reports of an inquiry that the president commissioned into some claims made by the Fourth Estate in a series of publications through the Media Foundation for West Africa, and at the president's request, they submitted a report on their claims. And answers were also sought from the Ministry of Roads and Highways. And a determination was made as to whether or not there was basis for any further action on the back of the claims that were made. So the report for that is ready, and I'll share that with you. So I will speak to these three issues. Now, the first issue relating to reports of the resignation of Justice Sofa A.B. Akufo, I can confirm that indeed Justice Sofa A.B. Akufo has resigned from her position as a member of the Council of State. She submitted a letter in September 2025 to the president indicating her desire to resign. She did not disclose the reason for wanting to resign. When the president received the letter, he was required then to indicate his acceptance of the resignation. But at the behest of the Council of State, he had to hold on because they said they wanted to engage Justice Sofa Akufo to see if there was some grievance that she had that was informing the resignation and whether or not there was a way that it could be addressed. So they asked the president to hold on with the acceptance. But they got back and said that they had engaged, and as far as they were concerned, the resignation could be accepted. So the president has formally accepted her resignation, and she's no longer a member of the Council of State. The law is clear on what processes to undertake to replace her, and that is going on as we speak. So in due course, a replacement will be announced for Justice Sofa Akufo. Regarding Dr. Bosman Asari, I can also confirm that he has submitted a letter to His Excellency the President indicating that effective 31st July 2026, he would resign his position as Deputy Chairperson of the Electoral Commission. He gives a reason for his resignation, which is that he wants to go back to academia and pursue his career as a staff of the University of Ghana, and conveyed his thanks and appreciation to the President and people of Ghana for giving him the opportunity to serve in that capacity. We are also aware that a second chairperson, in the person of Mr. Samuel Tete, has also gone on retirement as, I beg your pardon, a member of the Electoral Commission or a deputy chairperson. And in that regard, processes are underway. Indeed, the Council of State has already been given a nominee, which they are considering. And once that process is completed, an announcement will be made in terms of the replacement for Mr. Tete. And then in due course, a replacement will be found for Dr. Bosman Asari. So I can confirm the resignation of these two people. The second issue I want to raise has to do with the list of presidential staff. In fact, in the first quarter of this year, in compliance with the laws of Ghana, His Excellency the President presented a list of persons who work at the presidency. And the list has been published, so you are already aware of its content. There were 233 political appointees, and then 575 civil and public servants, making a total of 808. Indeed, President Mahama promised to slash down the number of political appointees and people who work at the presidency, the same way he promised to reduce the number of ministers and deputy ministers, and he's done exactly that. Now, if you compare this to the 2024 list, which incidentally President Mahama also submitted last year, even though the list was made up of people who were appointed by President Akufo-Addo, because President Akufo-Addo was not in power as of the deadline that the law gives for the list to be presented. President Mahama submitted it. There were 953 people who worked at the presidency under President Akufo-Addo in 2024, made up of 355 political appointees and 598 civil or public servants. We know that the list of people who work at the presidency had become topical, and combined with the number of ministers that existed under President Akufo-Addo, it raised significant public concern. So President Mahama vowed to reduce the numbers, and he has kept faith. In respect of ministers, currently there are 58 ministers, even though the president promised to work with 60. After the unfortunate loss of 2 of our colleagues, there has been no replacement. So 58 people are currently working as ministers and deputy ministers. And then currently we have 233 political appointees at the presidency and 575 civil or public servants, making it 808. Now, there have been a number of misleading claims, some in the media and some by political activists predominantly belonging to the New Patriotic Party. This morning, there were publications by Manjo Online, which sought to create the impression that President Mahama had increased the salaries of political appointees at the presidency. And therefore, they said that even though there had been a reduction in the numbers, the salaries had ballooned. We've also heard propagandists of the NPP make the same claim, even though we know that what they are saying is straightforward. They should know because they were beneficiaries of the arrangements. We all know that when it comes to fixing the emoluments, that is the salaries and working conditions of Article 71 office holders, the law is clear, the constitution is clear, that the president must set up a committee to determine those emoluments. For the avoidance of doubt, President Mahama has not set up a committee to determine the emoluments and working conditions of Article 71 office holders. So the salaries and conditions of Article 71 office holders who are working today under President Mahama were determined, documented. All the NPP activists making those false claims know. Indeed, the law requires that when the committee finishes, the presidency must submit the recommendations made for the presidency to Parliament or the executive to Parliament for approval. And then Parliament will also have the president approve the package for MPs. That was done. So 6th January 2025, President Akufo-Addo submitted the recommendations to Parliament, which was approved. Now, because President Mahama, in compliance with the Constitution, has not set up a committee to determine the conditions of service or the salaries of people working under him, it is what we came to meet that we are taking. It is therefore illogical and blatantly false for anybody, especially members of the opposition, after having determined the conditions of service of Article 71 office holders, to turn around and claim that President Mahama has increased the salaries and conditions of Article 71 office holders. Now, when the committee finishes its work, Article 71 office holders are clearly spelled out in the Constitution. So we know the president himself, vice president, ministers, deputy ministers, MPs, and what have you. The staff who work at the presidency, they are not people who you can classify as Article 71 office holders. However, there's a long established process preceding President Mahama, which makes room for analogous determination. In other words, they are ranked as though they were Article 71 office holders in order to determine their conditions of service. This is what President Akufo-Addo did. This is what President Mills did. President Kufuor, President Rawlings, and President Mahama himself in his previous guise as president between 2013 and 2021. So once that is done, then the salaries are determined. To determine the salaries, there's what we call award point. In other words, a grading that is used. So in 2013, for instance, and I have it here, I can show it to you. In 2013, when President Mahama became president, what had been determined before he left office is clearly stated from the Chief of Staff. The Chief of Staff, for instance, for purposes of determining his conditions of service, is placed below the Speaker of Parliament and above a cabinet minister who is also an MP. That is the ranking. I am a Minister of State. I'm also an MP. So I am ranked above somebody who is a minister but not an MP. If the person is a cabinet minister and an MP, he is ranked above somebody who is a cabinet minister and not an MP. So senior presidential advisors are in terms of working conditions, are classified in the same group as cabinet ministers who are MPs. So you find that not all ministers take the same salaries. And this is a practice that has existed since we began operating this constitution. So in 2013, This document shows, for instance, that the chief of staff was given award 0.75. Then in 2017, or at the tail end of the first term of President Mahama, he set up the Professor Dora Francisca Edubuando Emolument Committee, which determined the conditions of service for Article 71 office holders. That committee said that the chief of staff should move from award 0.75 to 79. So this is what existed until President Akufo-Addo came to power. So when they came to power, the chief of staff was taking this until President Akufo-Addo set up a committee chaired by Professor Ya Ntiamwa Beidu, which determined that for Article 71 office holders, the grade point that will be analogous for determining the chief of staff's conditions should move from 79 to 87. This was by the Professor Ya Ntiamwa Beidu Emolument Committee report. So for 2017 to 2021, the grade point was established, based on which the salaries of people who worked at the presidency was determined. The same President Akufo-Addo formed another emoluments committee at the tail end of his administration, chaired by Dr. Mrs. Janet Ampedufo-Fie, a prominent lawyer, who also led a committee that determined that, for instance, the chief of staff, he should move from 87 as a grade point to 94. So since this government came to power, it is these grade points that have been used. And President Akufo-Addo, President Mahama has not determined anybody's salary because he does not have the power to do so until the committee does it. The Constitution is also clear that nobody's conditions of service can be varied downwards. So President Mahama cannot on his own say that I have reduced the grade points that is used to determine the salary as determined by the constitutionally constituted committee that looked into it. It is when President Mahama sets up a committee to look into the emoluments that the committee may make these recommendations. President Mahama has said that he doesn't believe that he should set up a committee, and that as part of the constitution review process, and indeed over this weekend, Cabinet held an extensive sitting on Friday, Saturday, Sunday to consider the Constitution Review Commission's report. We've not finished. We'll continue by the close of this month, and we will take a position on that. The President has said it publicly, and indeed it is in the committee that looked into the Constitution Amendments report, that an independent emoluments committee should be set up to look at all salaries relating to all public and civil servants in Ghana, so that the disparities are removed. So President Mahama has said that he's not going to continue this trend. So he has not determined anybody's salaries. So if anybody goes out there to tell you that the numbers have reduced, but the monies have gone up, and so there's no use reducing the numbers, that person is doubling in falsehood. It is uninformed propaganda, especially that coming from MPP members. Now, what happens is this. When ministers and other Article 71 office holders are appointed and they take office, they are paid on account. Being paid on account means that your exact salary hasn't been determined, but you are paid what you came to meet pending the determination. So President Akufo-Addo's appointees who served between 2021 to 2024, and MPs, that is ministers, deputy ministers, staff in this office who are political appointees, and members of parliament, what they earned from 2021 to 2024 was what was determined for those who worked between 2017 and 2021. Once the Dr. Janet Ampedufo-Fie committee finished this report and new conditions and salaries were determined, they became automatically entitled to a top-up, which is the difference between what they took and what the committee has determined. I can confirm to you that since they left office, ministers, deputy ministers, and MPs who served in the 8th Parliament have received ex gratia payments and top-up salaries, which is the same as those serving in those capacities today have received, especially in terms of salary. I hope you understand what I'm saying. They have received top-ups. That is the difference between what they took and what the committee determined they should be paid. They have taken it. The MPs include the 137 MPP MPs who were in the 8th Parliament, some of whom were ministers and deputy ministers. there is an outstanding arrears that need to be paid to the staff who worked at the presidency, who were political appointees between 2021 and 2024. The finance ministry is working on it. Once that is paid, it will be the same in terms of salary as those that are being paid to, that the numbers have reduced but the figures have gone up. They are peddling ignorant propaganda. Some of them actually know, and yet they go out to say that, and you in the media are aiding that by failing or refusing to seek clarity and explanations for the documents that they present to you. And that is why it has even become necessary to address this. But for the avoidance of doubt, President Mahama has not added one CD to the salaries of his appointees at the presidency that he came to meet. And it must be placed strictly on record. So that is that. When I'm done with the general briefing, if you have any comments, questions, I can answer them. But the documents are all here. And I'm more than happy to show them to you, for you to see what the truth is. Exactly the point. Now, all of you recall that sometime this year, about a month or two ago, the Fourth Estate published what they said was a report which they claimed showed abuse in the award of contracts at the Ministry of Roads and Highways. At an interaction with CSOs at the presidency earlier this year, the president asked that the Fourth Estate present the claims they are making formally to his office, so that he triggers a process to look into the claims and see whether there is merit in it, which would then require further remedial action. And to the credit of the Media Foundation for West Africa, they presented their report on behalf of the Fourth Estate to the presidency. And once the president received it, he requested the senior presidential advisor on governmental affairs to do a preliminary assessment of the claims and take a response from the Ministry of Roads and Highways and look to see whether there is basis for any further action. The senior presidential advisor looked into it and has submitted her report to the president. It's a 72-page report. Now, in the interest of transparency and accountability, that report will be published. But just so that we put the matters in proper context, I am going to read to you highlights of the report and government's position on same, so that we are all clear about where things are. So the presidency received a report dated 1st April 2026 from the Media Foundation for West Africa on publications by the Fourth Estate regarding claims of abuse of the single sourcing procurement process in the award of contracts under the Big Push initiative. On April 2nd, 2026, His Excellency the President John Mahama referred the matter to the Senior Presidential Advisor on Governmental Affairs, Dr. Valerie Sawyer. The President tasked the advisor with investigating the allegations to establish their veracity and determining the appropriate course of action. The Media Foundation for West Africa report was forwarded by the Presidency to the Ministry of Roads and Highways on April 8th, 2026 for their response. The response was received at the Presidency on 21st April 2026. The final 72-page report was submitted to the President on May 22nd, 2026. In the interest of transparency and true to our commitment to accountable governance, the full 72-page report will be published by close of day tomorrow. I would, however, proceed to give a summary of the key findings in the report and government's position, which directly address the substance of the Fourth Estate's claims. Now, the first item relates to the details of the Big Push projects. Now, the title of the Fourth Estate publication was The Sole Source Factory, which was a reference to the Ministry of Roads and Highways. This description immediately conveys the impression that the predominant mode of contracting at the Ministry of Roads and Highways was through single-sourced contracts. It was imperative, therefore, that this be investigated to ascertain its veracity. Now, after a careful assessment of all the facts backed by documentary evidence, the report established that 1,441 project contracts have been awarded by the Ministry of Roads and Highways under the current John Mahama administration with the following breakdown. The Ghana Highways Authority has awarded 405 road contracts. The Department of Feeder Roads has awarded 896. There are 23 legacy projects. In other words, these are projects that this government inherited, which have been reworked for various reasons. Then there's the consolidated projects, also known as big push projects, which are 63 in number that have been awarded. And then there's the main big push projects, which number 54. Out of a total of 1,441 projects, 1,301 were awarded through open or competitive tendering. So 1,301 out of 1,441 projects were awarded through open or competitive tendering, and these were publicly advertised, and they are verifiable. The remaining 140 were awarded under the Big Push initiative. Out of the 140 Big Push projects, 66 were awarded via single source procurement method. 51 were awarded via restrictive tendering, and 23 were ongoing projects inherited from the previous government that had already been awarded on single source basis and absorbed under the Big Push initiative. The foregoing therefore reveals that 1,301 out of 1,441 contracts, representing 90.28% of road contracts under this government, were awarded through the open competitive tendering process. 90.28%. Only 4.58% of the total 1,441 road contracts awarded by the Ministry of Roads and Highways in 2025 and 2026 were awarded through the single sourcing process. 4.58%. Under the Big Push initiative, which is only one component of the total work being done by the Ministry of Roads and Highways, less than half, exactly 47.14% out of the 140 were awarded through the single sourcing process. Now, the implementing agencies of the Ministry of Roads and Highways obtained Public Procurement Authority board approval to award specific Big Push projects via single sourcing or restricted tendering. The implementing agencies for the above projects are the Ghana Highway Authority, the Department of Urban Roads, and the Department of Feeder Roads. The Ghana Highway Authority obtained approvals from the PPA board for 72 Big Push projects. Out of these 72 projects, 51 were procured through single sourcing and 21 through restricted tendering. The Department of Urban Roads obtained approval from the PPA board for 16 Big Push projects. Out of these 16 projects, 11 were procured through single sourcing and 5 through restricted tendering. The Department of Feeder Roads obtained approvals from the PPA board for 29 Big Push projects. Out of the 29, 4 were procured through single sourcing and 25 through restricted tendering. As indicated earlier, there were 23 legacy projects which were already awarded on single source basis by the previous government that were absorbed into the Big Push. Now, commitment authorization was obtained from the Ministry of Finance for 136 projects, but one project is yet to be awarded. The total number of projects awarded, therefore, is 135. At the end of the procurement stage, some projects were broken down into separate lots. These awards created 5 additional award records, thus increasing the total number of awarded projects from 135 to 140 without breaching the commitment authorization ceiling. The evidence above clearly shows that single sourcing was not the primary mechanism for General Ministry of Roads and Highways contracts, and therefore any claim that that ministry had become a sole source factory cannot be sustained on the basis of verifiable evidence. Because if only 4 point something % of road projects were awarded through sole sourcing, it cannot be said that this is a ministry that predominantly does sole sourcing. Now, justification for the use of single source for 47.14% of big push contracts. The 2024 NEC manifesto and subsequent proclamations by His Excellency the President and the Minister for Roads and Highways have shown that the Big Push initiative was designed as a rapid or accelerated program to resolve severe problems with critical roads and create jobs while boosting growth. The goal clearly is to create infrastructure development at an expanded pace, not the normal pace associated with such developments. The report found that the ministry's decision to single source 47.14% of the Big Push contracts was informed by urgent and compelling national considerations and primarily guided by the following strategic factors. 1. Accelerated infrastructure delivery, a core vision to rapidly scale and modernize the national road network. Procurement efficiency, comparative timeline analysis indicating that alternative bidding processes would introduce significant delays, which will only serve to exacerbate the suffering of people living in communities with these routes. Public and National Security Agency, heightened public outcry regarding severe road degradation, which pose direct national security vulnerabilities in critical corridors. Fiscal risk mitigation, the pressing need to hedge against market inflation and preventable project cost escalations. Given these extraordinary operational requirements, the statistical context for the program must be evaluated objectively. The single source framework was applied to 47.14% of the 140 specialized Big Push contracts. Crucially, this subset represents a mere 4.58% of the total 1,441 road sector contracts awarded by the Ministry of Roads and Highways. This demonstrates that competitive tendering remained the ministry's overwhelming baseline norm. Consequently, the data and basis for adopting the single source procedure refutes any claim that the Ministry of Roads and Highways acted in total disregard of the President's directive on fiscal prudence, or that it violated the executive pledge to treat single sourcing strictly as a controlled exception. The report therefore concludes that Ministry of Roads and Highways did not breach any procurement laws by using the single source procurement process prescribed in the Public Procurement Act 2003, that is Act 663, as amended. The ministry followed the procedure required by law in awarding the Big Push contracts, full stop. Neither did they abuse the single source than the norm. Now, the Media Foundation for West Africa, and by extension the Fourth Estate, also said that there were contradictory project figures, and the report also evaluated this claim against the information provided by the Ministry of Roads and Highways. Now, another claim contained in the Media Foundation for West Africa's report was that there were disparities in project figures they put out and the figures quoted by the ministry. The report concludes that seeming disparity may be due to a focus on the source of funding. The Ministry of Roads and Highways has various sources of funding for their infrastructure projects, including the Consolidated Fund, the Road Fund, bilateral and multilateral funds, as well as donor funding. The Big Push Fund was established by the Ministry of Finance in 2025 to provide dedicated financing for large-scale infrastructure projects. The fund's primary purpose is to accommodate the significant capital requirements of the Big Push projects, which will otherwise create a fiscal imbalance within the ministry's existing budgetary framework. Funding for the 140 Big Push projects is split between the Big Push Fund and the Consolidated Fund, focusing on infrastructure projects funded exclusively via the Big Push Fund creates an inaccurate picture of the reality on the ground. There were also claims in respect of the Dodo Pepeso Nkwanta Road. On the inconsistency of figures put out about the Dodo Pepeso Nkwanta Road, the report found that the Ministry of Finance letter dated July 11, 2025, which communicated the grant of commitment authorization for the rehabilitation of the Dodo Pepeso Nkwanta Road, which is a 46-kilometer road, indicated that the estimated cost was 684,000,000 and 1,621.50 Ghana cedis. 684 million and 1,621 Ghana cedis. That was the certified contract sum as contained in the commitment authorization for the road. A letter from the Ghana Highways Authority dated 31st December 2025 clearly stated that the estimated cost for the rehabilitation of the Dodo-Pepeso Nkwanta Road was 683,902,257.69 Ghana cedis, which was lower than the amount in the commitment authorization. If the estimated cost for the road was listed or published anywhere by the Ministry of Roads and Highways as 804 million, as alleged by the Fourth Estate and the Media Foundation for West Africa, this could only have been a genuine typographical error, since the commitment authorization does not allow an amount higher than 684 million for payment for the rehabilitation of the Dodo-Pepeso Nkwanta Road. The contract awarded to the contractor to construct that road clearly captures the contract sum as 683,902,957.69 million Ghana cedis. And that contract is now public knowledge. It's a matter of public record. It has been published. The contract that the ministry awarded states this as the figure. So if any other figure appears anywhere and not in the contract, this is clearly an error which cannot form the subject of any serious inquiry. Beyond a genuine error in stating the figure in the list of projects they publish, this does not raise any issue of impropriety whatsoever. The amount of money that the government of Ghana is bound to pay the contractor for the execution of that project is captured in the contract. No other figure will suffice. So it's important that we don't raise red herrings when the issues are very, very clear. Now, there's an issue involving a company called Growth 82 Global Limited. The Media Foundation for West Africa also alleged in their reports in reference to Growth 82 Global Limited and the rehabilitation of the Dodo-Pepeso Nkwanta Road project that the letter W was omitted by the ministry in the word growth, making it growth to avoid public scrutiny. Again, it's important. Whilst scrutiny and anti-corruption and public accountability are extremely important and we should demand same, it's important that we don't raise red herrings. The contractor for a project cannot be hidden. When you go to the project site, the contractor has a signboard bearing his name. He is also working on the project. So every Tom, Dick and Harry knows which contractor is executing the project. So in a communication from the ministry, if they omit the letter W, it does not concern the contractor. And we do not sincerely believe that this should have formed the basis for a request for an inquiry. The omission of a letter W does not convey any impression whatsoever of any act of impropriety. And so the report found that this was a red herring and nothing more. The report finds that the letter W was indeed left out of the spelling of growth in the letter from the Ghana Highways Authority to the PPA dated September 19, 2025 and on the ministry's website. However, while the company's name was misspelled in the initial correspondence from the Ghana Highways Authority to PPA, there was no evidence to back the allegation that this was a deliberate attempt to avoid public scrutiny. And as I've said, how can anybody hide a contractor who is visibly undertaking a road project on a route? It is not possible. Kamla, if you went to the site today, the project signboard gives you the details. So the claim that somebody omitted the letter W to avoid scrutiny is most unfortunate and amounts to a red herring at the very best. It is also unclear how a contractor awarded a contract which is being executed publicly in the full glare of all who ply that road can be concealed to avoid scrutiny. The Ministry of Roads and Highways has been advised to correct the mistake on this website and insert the letter W to reflect the correct spelling of the company's name. And this has been done subsequently. So if you went there, you will see growth clearly spelled. Unqualified contractors. Now, on the allegation that the contract for the Dodo-Pepeso Nkwanta Road rehabilitation was awarded in December 2025 to a company incorporated in January 2025, which means that the contract was awarded 11 months after incorporation and that the company is not classified as an A1B1 contractor. Evidence adduced show that the company awarded the Dodo Pepeso Nkwanta Road Messrs. Growth 82 Global Limited is classified as an A1B1 contractor with certificate classification number 0009780. Evidence shows that the company Growth 82 Global Limited was registered on August 18th, 2020, received A3B3 certificate on September 6th, 2024, and received A2B2 certificate on March 19th, 2025, and received A1B1 certificate on August 14th, 2025. The contract in question was assigned on 31st December 2025. Commencement of works on February 12, 2026, and actual commencement on March 16th, 2026. Enquiries reveal that the contractor had fully mobilized to site, completed 3 site camps on the project corridor, and had started fixing the bad sections on the corridor. The report further notes that the Dodo Pepeso Nkwanta contract was awarded through restricted tendering and not through sole sourcing. 5 companies were evaluated and 1 was selected to do the job. On allegations that documents received on 3 feeder road contracts show that some companies presented documents that ordinarily should raise eligibility issues. That is, Build Managers Limited indicated in its SNIT clearance certificate that it had only 1 worker. Sanam Ghana Limited indicated it had 4 workers. These are the allegations made by the Media Foundation for South Africa on behalf of the 4th Estate. Enquiries reveal that 1, Build Managers Limited SNIT certificate clearance listed 20 workers as of January 2025 with certificate number 2020-1157525003. Sanam Ghana Limited's SNIT clearance certificate lists 25 workers as of April 2022. Certificate number 1097022. Sanam Ghana Limited's SNIT clearance certificate as of April 2026. Certificate number 20140023126002 indicates that it has 26 workers. Now, value for money. The 4th Estate also raised issues of value for money and perceived inflation of contract sums on projects. On the allegation that a project like the 25-kilometer, that's Lot 3, of the dualization of the Winneba Cape Coast Road could cost as much as 154 million Ghana cedis per kilometer, the report found as follows. There were 2 lots for the Winneba Cape Coast Road. The first lot, which is 24 kilometers, has a PPA estimated cost of 1,878,011,148 Ghana cedis. The second lot, which is 25 kilometers, has a PPA estimated cost of 3,859,581,302.93 Ghana cedis. The explanation proffered for the higher cost per kilometer of the second lot is that the 2 projects have different scopes of work, even though they are almost the same in length. So the same length, but different scope of works. Apart from rehabilitation of the existing carriageway, construction of a new carriageway, service roads, and footbridges, the scope of the second lot further covers 3 grade separated systems, a 1,200-meter viaduct over existing alignment, and 4 long-span river bridges. This buttresses the position that road projects are not defined by length alone. So you don't just pick the length of a road and insist that the length of roads that are similar everywhere in the world should cost the same. And that if there are variations, then there's some wrongdoing. That, with the greatest respect to all, is pedestrian and does not reflect the facts. So this buttresses the position that road projects are not defined by length alone, as costs are significantly influenced by factors such as terrain conditions, pavement design, drainage and bridge requirements, utility relocation, and the overall scope and complexity of works. It has also been suggested by the 4th Estate that the construction of Dodo Pepeso Nkwanta will cost more than the original works done and inaugurated in 2016, and that there was something untoward about this. In other words, the new contract for the Dodo-Pepesu road is higher than the cost of fixing that road in 2016. And so the Fourth Estate and the Media Foundation for West Africa say that this in and of itself shows that there's some wrongdoing. It has also been suggested that the road was asphalted, and President Mahama praised the quality of work done when inaugurating the road in 2016, and that this gave credence to the claims of inflation. You see, for the avoidance of doubts, the road that was done on the Dodo-Pepesu in Kwanta stretch and inaugurated in 2016 was not an asphalted road. It was a double bituminous ceiling, which to the untrained eye appeared as asphalt, but it was not asphalt. Indeed, if you go back to the reports of the inauguration and President Mahama's comments, the reason why he commended it highly was that it was not an asphalted road, but it appeared as so because of the technique that was used. The current scope of works on the road includes: 1, scarification of the existing bituminous surface, new 600 millimeter U-drain, new 6 kilometer trap drain, natural gravel sub-base, new crushed rock base, 200 millimeters thickness, new asphaltic binder, new asphalt concrete wearing surface, and new road furniture. It is now going to be an asphalted road with all these new additions. So surely it is going to cost more than the previous one that was not asphalted. So there's no basis for the claim of inflation when all the facts are assembled. It is therefore this expanded scope of works that accounts for the higher costs. On the allegation that the 146 million Ghana cedi 9-kilometer Apegusu in Pakadan feeder road, the 35.7 million Ghana cedis is allocated. So let me take it again. On the allegation that in the 146 million Ghana cedi 9-kilometer Apegusu in Pakadan feeder road, 35.7 million is allocated for the maintenance of the feeder route headquarters, and the same maintenance of feeder route headquarters is allocated under 5.2 million Ghana cedis in the contract for the upgrading of Akosombo, Jekiti, Kudikope, and Yeniama to Sedon feeder roads. The report found that the original Apegusu in Pakadan road contract included a provisional sum of 30 million Ghana cedis for the maintenance of the Department of Feeder Road head office building. The original Akosombo, Jekiti, Kudikope, and Yeniama to Sodom feeder road contract included a provisional sum of 5 million Ghana cedis for the maintenance of the Department of Feeder Roads head office building. However, prior to the investigation, the Ministry of Finance had advised the Department of Feeder Roads that some of their big push contract awards exceeded approved commitment authorization limits. Consequently, all Department of Feeder Roads big push contracts were reviewed and adjusted to comply with these regulatory thresholds, significantly reducing the allocations previously categorized under general items. Notably, the provisional maintenance sum for the Department of Feeder Road head office building was reduced to 0 in the Apegusu in Pakadan road contract, while the allocation within the Akosombo, Jekiti, Kudikope, and Yanama Sodom feeder roads contract was reduced to 975,000 Ghana cedis. The report nevertheless emphasizes that the utilization of general items in such road contracts be strictly subject to the prior approval and direction of the Ministry of Roads and Highways. These funds are neither automatically applied nor used at the contractor's discretion. Instead, they are disbursed solely for ministry-approved priorities within the road sector. Consequently, while provision is made in the budget for general items, the Department of Feeder Roads cannot assess them without explicit Ministry of Roads and Highways authorization, and every single expenditure request undergoes strict vetting processes. On the allegation that in another feeder road contract, 3 cross-country vehicles and 2 pickup vehicles are to be procured, the report indicates that the allegation was not backed with any details of the actual road contract being referred to. On the allegation that even though the Media Foundation for West Africa did not have copies of the big push contracts, reliable sources at Ministry of Roads and Highways had said that amounts allocated for vehicles and other general items in the bigger contracts are totally absurd. The report indicates that the allegation was not backed with any information on who the reliable sources at the ministry are and what bigger contracts have absurd amounts allocated for vehicles and general items. on the allegation that while the data indicates different contractors have been awarded contracts through single sourcing, in multiple instances, some individuals own multiple companies that have been awarded contracts. The report indicates that the allegation was not backed with examples of contractors or contracts. On the allegation that the minister indicated that some of the contracts were put into lots to allow multiple contractors to be assigned to ensure competition and efficiency, but some of these road projects put into lots were given to the same contractors. The report indicates that the lots of the 4 projects listed in the allegation had indeed been given to 4 contractors, namely Kumasi Outer Ring Road, Lot 1, Lot 2, and Lot 3. All 3 lots were awarded to Arab Contractors Ghana Limited. Sunyani Outer Ring Road, Lot 1 and Lot 2 were awarded to Kofi Job Company Limited, and the dualization of Winneba Cape Coast Road, Lot 2 and Lot 3, both lots were awarded to MA and Constant Company Limited. Upgrading of Saboba Cheponi Road, Lot 1 and Lot 2 were awarded to Fuzak Company Limited. However, the contention that awarding multiple lots to a single contractor escalates costs, since the contractor will bill separately for general items and preliminaries, such as site camps for supervision on each lot instead of consolidating them, is flawed. This logic implies that diversifying contractors across lots will reduce expenditures. If different lots are assigned to different contractors, those independent entities will not share or subsidize each other's preliminaries and general costs. In other words, the claim is that if you break roads into different lots and award them to the same contractor, the cost will go up because their general items will not be the same. That claim is flawed, because if you give it to different contractors too, their general items will not be the same. In fact, they are even unlikely to speak to each other because they will operate separately. So that claim is completely false. It is flawed and has no basis. Consequently, the allegation that single contractor multi-lot awards artificially inflate project costs does not hold. Furthermore, awarding 2 contiguous lots to one contractor does not merge them into a single operational stretch. The contractor is legally and contractually obliged to execute works concurrently across both lots, which typically requires distinct personnel and machinery fleets. Ultimately, only contractors with proven high-tier capacity are entrusted with simultaneous multi-lot execution. Now, recommendations. After these findings, the senior presidential advisor makes recommendations to further improve the processes governing the awards of government contracts. Based on the above, the report made the following recommendation to improve transparency, governance, and financial management in the award of road contracts. 1. In accordance with the Value for Money Office Act 2026, all public sector single source contracts above the determined threshold must go through the VFM office and obtain a value for money certificate above the contract before the contract is awarded. Number 2, all public sector single source contracts above the determined threshold must be submitted for cabinet approval before the contract is awarded. 3, legislation intended to tighten the discretion surrounding the award of single source contracts should be accelerated and concluded urgently by the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Justice and Attorney General. 4, procurement entities must, within specified time frames, publish all approved single source contracts, comprehensive financial valuations, and verified ultimate beneficial owners on the centralized Open Government e-procurement portal. On the Value for Money Office, the recently enacted Value for Money Office framework presents an important opportunity to strengthen pre-award scrutiny, accountability, and public confidence in Ghana's procurement system. The Act was passed on 26 March 2026 to provide technical oversight and ensure that major government expenditure and projects deliver maximum benefit for public funds, especially focusing on economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. It was assented to by President John Mahama on May 11, 2026. While the Public Procurement Authority ensures procedural and legal compliance with the Public Procurement Act, the Value for Money Office provides technical and financial scrutiny. The Value for Money Office is mandated to ensure a value for money certificate before any public sector contract above a certain monetary threshold is awarded. It will also conduct rigorous value for money assessments of government programs and projects to verify that they are economically justified. Sections 29, 2A, 31, and 32 contain provisions about monetary thresholds to be prescribed by legislative instrument or executive instrument. The monetary thresholds outlined in the interim executive instrument or legislative instrument above will be applicable to single source contract awards. The report, however, acknowledges that even though integrating the Value for Money Office Act may introduce an additional layer of administrative oversight that could decelerate the accelerated big push agenda, the mechanism remains vital for guaranteeing fiscal transparency. The report therefore advises that to safeguard progress, the Value for Money Office must avoid creating artificial operational bottlenecks or bureaucratic hurdles. The pre-approval process must remain exceptionally rigorous without becoming inefficient, ensuring that the primary justification for single sourcing, expedited project delivery within critical timelines, is not compromised. On legislative reform, President John Mahama, in the 2026 State of the Nation address, promised to bring legislation to Parliament to tighten procurement processes by allowing resort to single source procurement method only in exceptional circumstances. In fulfillment of this promise, the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Justice and Attorney General are in the process of finalizing draft legislation to curb administrative discretion, minimize vulnerabilities to abuse, and elevate competitive bidding as the default statutory mechanism. Crucially, this reform will concurrently streamline open and competitive tendering processes by eliminating systemic inefficiencies within competitive bidding. The legislation will ensure that open procurement does not cause project delays detrimental to government timelines. On cabinet approval, making cabinet approval mandatory for high-value single-source contracts introduces a critical layer of executive oversight to garner public financial management. To strengthen fiscal discipline, cabinet approval should be made a mandatory prerequisite prior to the award of any single-source contracts. Contracts subject to this executive oversight must either meet the predefined financial thresholds established under the Value for Money Office Act 2026 or fall within specific limits explicitly determined by Cabinet. On publication of procurement calendars, adopting open data disclosures as a permanent systemic feature of the public procurement cycle is critical to restoring public trust. Procurement agencies must, within specified time frames, publish all approved single-source contracts, comprehensive financial valuations, and verified ultimate beneficial owners on a centralized open government e-procurement portal to dismantle any perception of patronage. Now, in conclusion, from the above analysis, the Ministry of Roads and Highways did not abuse the single-source procurement process in the award of project contracts or in the big push contracts. The ministry acted within legal provisions and bona fide boundaries regarding the big push contracts. The report, however, indicates that there seems to be a strong public aversion to single sourcing unless reserved for genuinely exceptional circumstances. Even though current legislation takes care of these sentiments by providing the exceptions when single sourcing may be applied, it will be advisable to further restrict administrative discretion in the evaluation of future single sourcing applications. Thus, even though the Ministry of Roads and Highways acted within the existing provisions of the Public Procurement Act 2003, Act 663, as amended, and obtained the necessary approvals for single sourcing, public concerns highlights the need for stronger institutional transparency, enhanced public disclosure, and proactive independent oversight mechanisms. The report recognized the transparency efforts demonstrated by the Fourth Estate and the Media Foundation for West Africa as serving as an essential role in fostering public accountability and bringing procurement data to national attention. In other words, government highly values the efforts made by the Fourth Estate and the Media Foundation for West Africa to shed light on some of these matters, to hold government to account and ensure that there is further transparency in what government does with the resources of the people. And we thank them dearly for that effort. We also acknowledge their roles in unearthing some wrongdoing, especially in the national service case and other exposés that they've been doing over the years. We hope to continue to partner them going forward to address any gaps that may exist in public accountability. The report concurrently recognized the commitments of the Ministry of Roads and Highways to executing the big push agenda, which reflects a clear imperative to accelerate infrastructure development, stimulate job creation, and drive economic growth. The report concludes by stating that the Public Procurement Authority Board, the Value for Money Office and Cabinet must function in tandem to ensure that accelerated national infrastructure initiatives such as the Big Push Agenda are executed with optimal financial scrutiny and structural integrity. So, in the absence of any other evidence to the contrary, the President has accepted this report and wants the recommendations made for improvements in the administration of public procurement to be carried out. But beyond that, no further action is required, as the evidence that has been put forward shows. Thank you very much. If you have any question on the three issues that I've raised, I will take them now.